So, how about if I just go ahead and get the meeting started? I think we've worked with a number of you before. We're the citizen, basically a citizen advisory group for planning and zoning issues in the Hunter Mill district. Uh, Mark Goldberg Foss is supervisor's representative on this, and uh, we barely make recommendations. Are there any, Mark? You had mentioned that there would be some residents or community members joining the meeting tonight from, I think, for both applications.
Yeah, Steve, I did invite a couple community members who represent HOAs in the vicinity of each. I see Rupa has joined us. She's closer to Woodland Park. Hey, Rupa, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started then? And I do have comments from Ross Shearer, who is one of the community members who told us he wouldn't be able to be with us tonight, and he had some comments on both applications. So we'll get to them then. And of course, this committee provides recommendations to both the Board of Supervisors, particularly our supervisor, Walter Alcorn, and also the Planning Commissioner Carter, who has joined us tonight as well. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Woodland Park. That's RZPA 2025 HM 98. Woodland Crossing Retail LLC. The representatives of that application can, I don't know who your spokesperson will be. Grant, will you be the spokesperson?
Well, both of us, both Michael and I, will be speaking on behalf of our application.
Okay.
And,
well, yeah.
Well, I was going to say I can start.
Okay, that's great. Oh, just one thing I wanted to mention, since we do have a community member here, the way we normally do this is after the presentations, then the committee makes its comments and questions, and then we go to the community member. So that's the way we'll do this tonight. So well, go ahead, Grant, if you'd like to
sure.
Get things rolling.
Michael, do you want to show? Okay, you're going to do that. Okay, great. Because we put together a little presentation material to describe the property and give you a little history on the background of the property and also what our request is. So if you want to show the site plan or the aerial. So hopefully you all are familiar. Well, you can go back to the aerial. Hopefully you all are familiar with the property. It's on Sunrise Valley Drive and multiple access points off of Sunrise Valley Drive. And the history on this property is this was built 14, 15 years ago by a firm that I was associated with, JBG and JBGR. And we bought this piece of land from the Evans Company, which used to own this entire property, which was called, Woodland Park. And they wanted to create a retail presence and a mixed use presence here. And we were sort of specialists in terms of creating vibrant mixed use environments. And they brought us in and we created what you see today, which is Woodland Park Crossing. Brought in Harris Teeter and designed this project so that it's got, we also brought in a partner to build the residential, and that was Bizzuto, which has sold the apartments since then. We sold the property to a firm which became BGO, and BGO owned it for roughly 15 years. My firm, my new firm, which I created 8 years ago at this point, bought it back from BGO. And they had, unfortunately, it's not been performing as well as they had hoped. And it had about 30% vacancy in the small store space. Harris Teeter hasn't really been performing all that well. We came on board, we bought it roughly a year ago and have in a year's time, and I think you can move to some of those other slides, Michael, and show them. Yeah. So when we bought it, this is all the vacancy that was in the existing property. And we since then have gotten leases or signed letters of intent for almost all of the vacancy that's in the property. We do still have an issue with Harris Teeter is doing okay, not great. And, our concern is our primary objective is doing everything we can to keep Harris Teeter in this property. And one of the primary ways to do that is to keep the existing shopping center leased and vibrant and occupied and drawing customers, which will help, Harris Teeter to keep them as a solid tenant. So in short, one of the issues that we've had is there are zoning issues that we've run into with the underlying zoning that are restrictive in terms of the uses that we can do in the property. And we're coming back to the county and obviously to the citizens and to the planning board in order to get them to help us to make these, to modify some of these restrictions or to allow some of these uses. And one of the uses specifically is a veterinary clinic. And the current zoning does not allow us to have a veterinary clinic. And obviously today, in today's world, that's a use that's pretty innocuous and a pretty desirable use because so many of us have, dogs and cats and other pets. And that's one of the primary reasons that we're here today, is in order to get you all to allow us to modify the zoning to be able to allow a veterinary use in this property. And I'm open to any questions or, thoughts or suggestions that any of you all have. And we're here to answer those questions.
Okay, well, yeah. Oh, Jim.
Yeah, just to touch on our application a little bit, we're going through our Woodland Park Crossing is currently zoned in the PDC, Plan Development Commercial District. We are currently filing a concurrent final development plan amendment and proffered condition amendment to essentially expand the allowable uses within Woodland Park Crossing. The scope of our application includes the approval of these uses right here, which are currently secondary uses and not by right uses within our zoning. So as Grant mentioned, we received interest from a veterinary clinic that approached us with interest to be in our center, which was sort of the onset of this process, was to get approval to allow for a veterinary clinic to lease space within Woodland Park Crossing. And in going through the process and analyzing some of the secondary uses, we thought if we were going through that process, we could analyze some of the other secondary uses that would serve to benefit Woodland Park Crossing and the surrounding community as well, which is inclusive of pet grooming establishments, carry-out restaurants, commercial recreation indoor, which excludes shooting and archery ranges, and craft beverage production establishments. So we have an executed lease with a veterinary hospital contingent on the approval of this application and the allowance of a veterinary hospital. But we obviously believe that all of these uses could serve to benefit the shopping center and the surrounding community very much. So we do have our Planning Commission public hearing date scheduled for June 3rd. And are looking forward to that hearing date and refining our application as we continue to go through the process.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go around to the committee. Now I'm echoing again, Mark. I don't know when that's happening, but
I guess if folks could just mute whenever you're not speaking, that could address the echo. Appreciate it.
okay. Yeah. So I don't have any questions at this time. So why don't we go around to the committee? Then we'll go to Planning Commissioner Carter, and then we'll go to see, I'll start with Ben. Do you have any comments?
Just a question, and maybe this is something that I should just look up separately, but the commercial recreation excluding archery and shooting, what does that include if it's excluding those two?
I think a common example of it would probably be a pickleball use, for instance, something that's obviously been very engaging with community members and people nationally. It's been a sport that's garnered a lot of interest. I think indoor recreation facilities, for instance.
Yeah, I was going to say another use is we just done a deal. We own a property out in Sterling, Virginia, and we did a deal with a tenant called Activate, and it's an indoor sort of it's an indoor recreation facility where there's a lot of technology involved, and you have games that it's mostly for kids, kids and young people, and you go and like there's squares on the floor and it'll go, okay, don't step on the red square, and you jump on the blue square, that kind of thing. So
yeah, the immersion virtual reality type games and escape.
Exactly.
Okay. I didn't think those fit within the recreation category, but I guess that makes sense. So yeah, I think it surprising that it's not already allowed, that type of a use. So yeah, I have no problem with it. It sounds like you guys have done what you need to.
The reason, and I'll tell you, Ben, the reason that because I remember when we rezoned this property, the problem was when we rezoned it, this was an office park. And so getting the rezoning to allow us to be able to do something outside of office was not, it wasn't as broad as what we would normally get in a retail zoning. And so that's why it's more restrictive. And that's why we're coming back. Under normal circumstances on a Fairfax County zoning C7, C8, we wouldn't have to be here. But because this was a PDC or PDR, I can't even remember the acronym anymore of what this zoning was, it was more restrictive. And that's why we are where we are.
Okay, anything else, Ben?
No, that makes sense, and I understand the situation you're in. I think it's you guys have done great, and I don't have any other questions.
Great. Hey, Anne-Marie.
Hi, good evening. Thanks. I'm not totally clear. The 5 additional uses in the use menu that you're seeking, are those limited because of the zone you're in, or are they limited by the fact they were not enumerated in your existing proffers?
Because of the zone that we're in.
So this is where I'm not totally clear. So to now include those uses in the permitted uses via the proffers supersede the zoning? That's what I'm not clear on.
Well, they're currently secondary uses, and so we will have to amend the proffers. When you say secondary, do you mean
accessory uses? Like, what's a secondary use versus a So what's the primary use if they're secondary? That's what I'm. not
Well,
getting.
primary uses would be included in the proffers. We will have to amend the proffers to allow for these uses.
But are these
But they're
accessory uses like
no, well,
accessory?
they're defined in Fairfax County zoning as secondary uses within the PDC
So
zoning
secondary to what?
secondary to the primary uses, which I believe would be by right uses within our zoning district.
My understanding is these would secondary uses, if they're not approved under the existing zoning code, mean that you have to go back, like we're doing, and go back to the board, the planning commission and the board in order to get the approval to allow these uses to be in the shopping center. That's my understanding.
So you've got, okay, so you've got primary uses and secondary uses.
Right.
Which is a primary use and which is a secondary. And if they're all listed in the proffers, why is there any distinction? Because you're choosing from a menu. Like it's not like you have to have a percentage of primary uses to qualify for secondary
No,
uses.
because some uses are by right, quote unquote, by right, and some are not. And unfortunately, the veterinary clinic and some of these other uses that we're requesting, like the assembly uses, are not by right under the current zoning at Woodland Park Crossing. And that's why we're coming back and making.
Well, this is a plan district, right?
Correct.
So effectively nothing's by right in a plan. I mean, if it's by right, we don't even have to put them in the proffers. I'm just so confused here by why these wouldn't have been in.
Because we didn't think of it when we built the center. I mean, truthfully, I designed the center. And I didn't think that a veterinary clinic, it just didn't occur to me that a veterinary clinic wouldn't be allowed in the shopping center.
What's the difference between a veterinary clinic and a veterinary hospital?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think that neither would be allowed under the current zoning.
Right.
And we don't have a veterinary hospital here. This is just a clinic. People bring in, dogs and cats that have issues, and they don't spend the night there. Right. This is not a hospital. This is not an animal hospital. This is just a clinic.
I think that's the use that's sought, though. It says veterinary hospital. I'm just, my assumption is I believe a hospital requires a 1 acre and an outdoor space. So that's why I'm just curious what the use is. So that's the.
Pretty sure. Do you know, Michael, if this is I'm pretty sure this is just a veterinary clinic.
The proffer request is hospital. That's why I'm
okay.
Quickly like looking it up in the zoning ordinance, trying to understand what's the difference.
I believe it is a veterinary hospital, but I'm not sure what the difference is.
Okay.
And from conferring with multiple parties throughout the county, the consensus has kind of been what we've discussed on this call, that it would have been assumed that it could have been a use that would have been included already. But I think given how the area has changed since the property was developed, as Grant said, it wasn't something that they necessarily thought about at the time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just quickly looking in the zoning ordinance. I don't see a definition for veterinary clinic. There's animal shelter, kennel, pet grooming establishment, and veterinary hospital. So this would be one of those. And then,
yeah, it's the kennel use that has the outdoor component. The veterinary hospital does not. And those are both in the sort of use table for the PDC district. Those are both secondary uses. They just, as you said, because it's a P district, there is no by right. Everything has to be in the proffer and on the FDP. So that's why they had to come back to just add these uses that are, in the use table, but just not permitted yet on this property because of the rules with the P district.
mm-hmm. Right. And if it has an outdoor component, you have to go through a special exception, I guess, to get it. Although once enumerated in your proffers, you're relieved of any special exception. Is that right?
Well, I know that we're not going to have an outdoor facility here.
Yeah.
This is
so I
just
guess-
an indoor facility. That's it.
Yeah, probably that you couldn't offer that much space. That they would
We don't, yeah, the property isn't designed for that.
be just an inline. Okay. Just real fast. Pull up. I didn't have any other. Oh, what is an escape room? Is that commercial or excuse me, commercial recreation?
Yes.
Okay.
So escape room would be like there's a lot of those. That's a
Right.
new, right. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's just a place where you go and you kind of play act and it's a party, sort of a party facility.
Yeah, I saw that had to go through a special exception somewhere else. And I thought, well, that's kind of obvious for commercial recreation. Okay.
Mhm.
One more quick question. Oh, okay. A carry-out restaurant meaning exclusively carry-out?
Yeah, it's limited. I believe it's limited to eight seats within, but
Okay.
the primary function of the restaurant would be for off-site consumption.
Right. Does that include drive-through type? I
No,
think
No,
there's
no
no.
drive.
there are
Okay.
no drive-through.
There would be
Okay.
no drive-through.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry to have this obscure kind of zoning theory question, but it's just unclear to me, which rules in the hierarchy. Is it the proffers or the zoning ordinance?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a reasonable question.
Thanks.
Hey, I just have one question. There is still residential development occurring in that area to the north of this. Is that the case?
There's a lot of rezonings that are occurring right now with the office that is failing, and some of those properties are being rezoned for residential uses, but not our property, but to the closer to the toll road.
Right. Well, because it's pretty densely, the housing is pretty dense in that area, townhouses and some multi-family, but that's still not keeping Harris Teeter afloat, or not. It's not doing as well as like.
Well, it's interesting to me because I always, when we put this deal together, I always thought like this would be a great site for Harris Teeter, and it never performed as well as I'd hoped, and their sales are below really, profitability based on what their rent is, but recently they've shown a little bit of an uptick, and so we're hopeful that with some concessions that we can provide and that we can hopefully convince them to stay. And that's our objective. Our objective is to make sure, or to hope that we can keep them, if we can keep them there. And if we can't, then we have other alternatives. We're thinking about other things we can do with the space.
Okay, great. Actually, I'm going to go to see. Let me go to Rupa now, and then we'll go to Commissioner Carter. Rupa, you have a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I am the Vice President of the Woodland Park HOA Townhome Community, which is right opposite to the Harris Teeter Complex Shopping Center that you are talking about. And I definitely agree. It's a great idea to have this different businesses out there because there are a lot of townhome communities, condominiums, apartments, residential communities out there. That's definitely a great idea, but I do have a quick question. Harris Teeter is one of the very closest grocery stores that we have. It's kind of walkable distance to our community and very easily accessible. And it's been there for almost a little over 15 years to 20 years, I think, from
Yes.
the beginning when this development was started, right? So I'm just a little bit curious as to the vet clinic that you're talking about. Is that going to be replacing Harris Teeter?
No, it's just a small store space in the shopping center. It's a few thousand square feet. That's it.
Do you know exactly which location? Because I'm very familiar with the geography of the place.
Sure.
Yeah, it's it'll be the space that is, if you're looking at Harris Teeter, it is an inline space to the right of Harris Teeter, where it'll be going currently. I guess the lease has been executed, but currently vacant space.
I see. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, though. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carter, do you have any comments or questions?
John, you're muted.
I was looking to answer some of those questions that we had about the zoning. The zoning ordinance doesn't seem very clear about this. I guess the zone doesn't allow this, but it allows the proffers to add uses. So I guess this works. Could you give us a little bit more of why you need this? So we can get around this zoning issue?
What do you mean? Why do we need it?
Well, I get the economic answer to that. I'm just looking at what kind of community this produces, something from a planning perspective that would support what you're doing. I really don't have any qualms about it, but I just would like something to be able to explain to the planning commission, and I don't see it in the zoning ordinance.
Well, I think that what I would say is that the zoning ordinance should be modified and it should allow these types of uses in a shopping center. I mean, these are the things that we're requesting are things that are in just about every traditional neighborhood shopping center, you know, in our region. And based on the prior zoning and, you know, to get this approved 15 years ago, it's basically an office park. And so we had to modify the office park zoning. So these types of uses, again, if they're in a commercial zoning, C7, C8, C6, under current Fairfax County zoning, all of these uses would be allowed and we wouldn't be requesting this modification. That's what I would, that's how I would answer that question.
All right, I think that's a good answer.
Okay.
I think I can get something out of that.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any qualms about this.
Good.
Yeah.
Some of those uses like the vets, when you get more elaborate with the hospital, so there's stormwater management involved and there's play areas outside and all that. This is not that.
No, we don't have that. No.
So these are normal uses. Normal uses you find in a neighborhood shopping center, which is what this is.
That's it. That's exactly right. And again, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was going to say in addition to that, there are no site modifications that are proposed with any of these uses, nor would be necessary, which obviously limits the invasiveness of implementing any of these uses to create what will be a diverse and solid shopping center that can stimulate the area.
Yes, and for better or worse, that's just how this zone is set up to be able to make these changes.
Right.
Rather than fixing the zone in and of itself, it allows the applicant to apply for fixes to make it work.
And in fact, John, when we were sort of surprised that we had to do this in order to do the veterinary clinic. And we go, wait, well, we have to go back and go to the planning commission and get this approved? And the answer was yes. That's just the sort of the idiosyncrasies of the zoning criteria. That's just the way it is. So
I'll ask the staff about this, but were there changes to the zone that made it not possible to do the right thing, basically?
Well,
we have some of that.
Well, the zone, I don't want to disparage that, to go back to, because again, when we got this rezoned, we were working within an office park zoning, and
Yeah.
we weren't going to rezone it to a C8 zoning. We couldn't do that because also it was a mixed use project that we were
Well,
developing.
yeah, you'd have other problems if you did that.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we did that. We worked within, you know how these things work. I mean, you work within the legal confines of what the zoning allows you to do. And when we develop this property, we go, great, we can be able to build the shopping center, we can improve these apartments and get this project approved.
Right, right.
But at the time, we weren't thinking, oh, we need to do a vet. We need to do a veterinary clinic. We need to do this, we need to do that. It didn't
Yeah.
occur to us at the time.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Would you be willing to come back in May? We don't have a quorum. We have, in some cases, made recommendations of approval in the absence of a quorum. But since we have some time, perhaps you may consider coming back in May.
And well, we don't have that much time. That's the problem. I mean, because we've got a timeline primarily based on the veterinary clinic, and we're going to run out of time. I mean, if you require us to, we'll do whatever you require us to do. But if there's any possibility of getting this approved or moving it along, with after this meeting, we would really appreciate it. But if that doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
okay, no,
yeah.
I think we could go ahead, and I think there are, so long as there are no objections from the other two committee members. Any Ben and Marie, what
No objection, and I'd move to give them a recommendation.
Anne Marie?
I mean, I have no problem adding. These are very curated uses for a very curated list. I mean, this really has no general applicability whatsoever. So
Right.
yeah, I have no problem with that. It's 5 additional uses, some of which kind of seem repetitive of the 24 uses already on the list.
Okay, well, no, neither do I, but let me read what Ross Shearer had to say about this one. He said, I do not understand. Oh, what that's not germane here. He said that, let's see, he doesn't understand why the update to 10% secondary use GFA to 75%. That seems like opening a crack door pretty wide. I appreciate the shift with market fluctuations, but I don't understand the impacts. But, I think we covered some of this, and, I just wanted to put that on. So, we've had a motion, I seconded. We've all indicated our recommendations to approve in the absence of a quorum. So our recommendation has been made, so we can move on to the next application. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck.
you all.
Thank you all for your time.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. See you later.
Okay, see it. So we'll find now to our RC 2026 HM3 BE Tysons LLC. It's on Spring Hill Road in Tysons. The planning commission date is 11/18 and the BOS date is 12/8. So if the applicants would like to come forward.
Yes, good evening. My name is Zach Williams. I'm a land use attorney with Venable, and good evening to the members of the committee and Commissioner Carter. It's good to be with you all tonight. We do have a presentation, a brief presentation that I'm going to go ahead and share here before I hand it off to Kevin Berman to talk about the Berman, the applicant, as well as the application. So let me go ahead and share the presentation here. Hopefully everyone can see it. Okay. So along with me tonight is my colleague, Megan Rappelt with Venable, and as well as Kevin Berman with the applicant, Berman Enterprises, and Peter Reineck with VICA. I want to just say before we get started here that we are very early in the process. This application was just accepted a week or so ago. We're still awaiting the first round of staff comments, which we hope to get in May. We're currently scheduled for public hearings at the very end of this year, so we're just at the very beginning of the process, and we're happy to be engaging with you all. We've already had some conversations with the community and neighbors, and we're going to continue to do that, obviously, as we go through this process. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Berman with Berman Enterprises to talk about the application. Kevin?
Thanks, Zach. First, I want to say, just want to thank everybody for inviting us to let us talk about the project a little bit. But before we get into the specifics of the project, I wanted to give a little history of Berman Enterprises and kind of how we got to this moment. Kevin Berman, I'm part of the third generation of Berman Enterprises. The company was founded by my grandfather and his brother. They started developing shopping centers in the 1950s when no one kind of had any idea what a shopping center was. From there, the business went to my father and his cousin, where they continued managing retail, and they expanded into the office market, buying office buildings in the early 90s, doing development of office buildings. And then now I work with myself, I work with my brother and two cousins. So there's four of us as part of the third generation. And we continue to manage the retail and office, as well as adding residential development. And kind of one of the themes of what we do is we take assets that we look that are in distress in one form or another, and we work with the community to figure out what does this asset want to be, and then we work to stabilize the asset through that process. And we've done all sorts of it's really been a fun journey over my career to do all sorts of fun projects where, I would say about 10 years ago, we bought an undersized mall. It was about a 250,000 square foot enclosed mall that had been abandoned for 10 years. We worked with the city of Bowie to redevelop that mall to a healthy Harris Teeter shopping center. A little more recently, we acquired a 22-story office building. When we acquired it, it was 95% vacant. And, in working with the local community, we basically upgraded half the building to make it viable office again. And the other half of the building we converted to multifamily. So again, we're always looking for assets that, for one reason or another, they're not quite working in their current shape and form. And then we try to take it through a process that ends up with something that can really be contributing to the community it's a part of. So in 2023, Tysons Concourse came on the market. When we looked at it, it was 66% occupied and dropping. There was a handful of tenants in there that had already provided notice, and two buildings, 66 and declining, is really not a healthy situation. All of a sudden, your vacancy is sucking up, the cost of your vacancy is sucking up all of the profit. And when you see it declining with just the general office environment right now, it becomes a very, very scary situation. So what we did is we looked at the two office buildings and we were trying to figure out how can we do the best for this property and for the community here. And the plan we came up with why don't you shift to the next slide, Zach? Kind of get a little bit more of a visual here. The building on the left, we had shorter term leases and had more vacancy. And what we did is the building on the left is the east building. We took all the tenants from all the remaining tenants for the east building and moved them into the west building. And our goal here is rather than having a 66 and declining occupancy, can we get to a healthy 80% occupied, 90% occupied in one building, and then look to redevelop the other half of the property? So let's kind of look at, kind of get ourselves oriented here. We got Leesburg Pike, and we're about a quarter mile away from, or the edge of the property is about a quarter mile away from the Spring Hill Metro stop. On one bound, we have the Tysons Forest with the True Ground development on the other side. You want to keep moving, Zach? So what we've come up with here is, and our application's really two applications. We have a CDP for the entire site. And the goal is we want to think about the site holistically, so we're not piece zoning the site. We want to think at final build out, how does the site fully integrate together? But at this moment, we have a CDP and an FDP. And right now, so when we're looking at the CDP and kind of the full vision of the site, closest to the metro, which is the upper right-hand corner of what you're looking at, we put the highest density. Staff was encouraging us with the orientation towards Spring Hill Road and the Spring Hill Station, look bigger there, go bigger there. Then as we work our way from the station and we transition more towards the single family homes and the Tysons Forest, we look to do lower density. So kind of what you're looking at here is the two upside down, or the upside down L and the 7 are two multifamily high-rise buildings. Around the perimeter, you're seeing townhouses, and then kind of fronting Boone Road, you're seeing 2/2s and triplexes. Zach, you want to next step? So again, here's a little bit of the quarter mile radius, and here you can really see the orientation within the community. In the northwest corner, you have the Spring Hill Road. There you're seeing the multifamily. As you work towards Tysons Forest, you see the townhouses fronting the forest. As you work, this is the connection point between the single family homes through the Vesper Trail is our eastern boundary, and with the lower density. And then as we loop around, and we'll get more detail of this later, you'll see Boone, future Boone Boulevard on the northern edge. So to kind of understand the phasing here, the concept is we're going in for inclusive of our submission is we have an FDP for phase 1. Again, this is the eastern office building, which is now vacant, which the goal is tear down the eastern office building and put in kind of the type A is a townhouse product. The type B is a 2/2 or triplex product. And the goal here is to integrate this with the Vesper Trail, the Tysons Forest, and the future Boone Boulevard. And in meeting with the community, as well as meeting with the builder community, finding out what's economically viable right now, we got a lot of encouragement to look at this as the edge of Tysons as a transitional area between the single families and the higher density of the rest of Tysons. Zach, you want to go to the next? So again, what we're trying to show here is we have phase 1 being built out now that's economically viable right now, and phase 2 is in the future when and frankly if this office building becomes no longer viable. At this point, the office building is doing great. It's about 85% occupied right now, and in addition to that, a lot of the leases extend well into the 2030s. So our hope is that office building will be here for a while, but with the uncertainty around the office market, if that office building were to fail in the future, we have a plan that makes sense with phase 1. But we're not pursuing an FDP for phase 2 right now. So anything articulated in our concept for phase 2, we'd be coming back to the planning board supervisors and to your committee to discuss that before it ever were to move forward. Jack, you want to slide? So to give a little visual here, the goal is to try to incorporate the townhouse community with the Tysons Forest, creating some active recreation next to the kind of the passive recreation of the forest. Zach, you're going to keep sliding. And just to kind of more clearly articulate that in plan view, you can see that the forest on this screen is to the left, and to the bottom, we create a large buffer. And then in addition to that, we create pocket parks, and urban parks adjacent to the townhouses that kind of extend, I was actually on the Tysons Forest task force with Jack Russell, and what he kept reiterating is every inch we can push that Tysons Forest really helps rebuild. And so what we were trying to do is squeeze as much land as we could to help that sensitive environment. Zach, you want to slide? And then finally, to respect the Tysons grid of streets plan, the plan right now is to dedicate our half of Boone Boulevard as part of our application. And here you can kind of see that green area is the future Boone Boulevard. So I'll turn the mic over to Zach, and he can talk a little bit more about where we are in the process and kind of what is the process going forward.
Great, thank you, Kevin. So to get into the mechanics of this application, we have submitted a formal rezoning along with a CDP and FDB application to rezone the property, the PTC planned Tyson zone. Along with that zone comes the CDP, and Kevin went over that. That's sort of the umbrella conceptual approval for the entirety of the site, as well as the FDP, which would be just for phase 1, as Kevin went over. The CDP, as you saw, includes sort of the general programming of what we're envisioning for the site, from the multifamily to the townhomes, to the 2/2s, triplexes, as well as the roads, the vehicular connections, the public space, the open space, the parks. But most of that, or much of that, will not actually be built in phase 1. Phase 1 will only include the townhomes and the 2/2s and triplexes on that southern portion of the site, most of which is outside the quarter mile of the metro vicinity of the site. The future phase, I think, as Kevin articulated well, will be pursuant to another FDP. And when we decide to come forward with that, we'll obviously be back before the committee. It will probably be some years down the road at this point, and we'll be coming back to the community, back to the process to talk through the details of that. So next steps, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, staff just accepted this application on April 6th. The truth is we've been working with planning staff for better part of a year now to try to get a good sense of not only what will work for the Berman team, and the property itself, but also what works from given the planning of the site. This site is within the Tysons small area plan. There are planning principles, and there's a vision for the site. And so we wanted to make sure that we were respecting that. As Kevin mentioned, one of those issues is that extension of Boone Boulevard, for example, but as well as how the density is allocated, where it should be placed, the public space, the amount of open space. A lot of this comes out of the Tysons plan, so it's deliberate. We are looking forward to staff comments, formal comments in mid-May, and that will really kick off the review process. Most of that process will go on throughout the year. We're currently scheduled for a planning commission hearing in November with the board hearing in December. Obviously, that's a good bit away. A lot of work to be done between now and then, and we expect we will continue to engage with you all in the community as we go through that process. So before I conclude, I will just say we have, obviously, Kevin is here. I'm here along with my colleague Megan. We also have Peter Reineck here with VICA, which created the plans that you saw, some of those plans, as well as the engineering on the site. So we look forward to answering questions from the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let me read Ross Shearer's comments first, and then we'll go to the rest of the committee. Let me bring those up here. So Ross says about this proposal. It is pretty intensive, will lead to increased need for public space, which I don't see as adequate. Plus, there is the issue of the future burden on West Briar Elementary School. Generally, I hope I am mistaken, but Tyson's development seems all too tight. Inadequate setbacks, sidewalks are too narrow, and that this proposal doesn't lend an inviting viewscape. But this applicant's proposed structures are visually appealing. The requested exemptions for narrower private roads to reduce impervious surfaces while seeking longer ones for connectivity seem like the result of a design challenge the plot presented. Since groundwater is a challenge this close to the Old Courthouse Spring Branch Creek, which does flood on occasions. If I were present, I would ask that the applicant consider locations where permeable pavement could be used, such as sidewalks and surface parking. As to energy efficiency, it is my understanding that LEED requires meeting the model energy code requirements for townhouse and low-rise residential buildings. I see no reason to reject the requested amendments for the Tysons Concourse project, except to note that it is not located in the Providence District as stated in the header. We know first that it's in Hunter Mill. Okay, so that those are Ross's comments. I assume, in fact, I know that this will be coming back to us, so Ross will have another opportunity to pose questions and comments. So why don't we go to, well, let me ask this first. Do we have any members of the public that are here for this project, for this proposal? None? Okay. Okay, well, why don't we go
Well, yes.
to...
Hello, hi. I am a member of the public, I think. I count.
Okay. Okay, and
Yeah.
any others? Okay.
I guess it's just
Okay.
me.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go to the committee first. Actually, we'll go to the public next, and then we'll go to Commissioner Carter. But we'll start with Anne Marie. Anne Marie.
Hi, thank you. I have some technical questions. Okay, so I'm trying to think, and I think these will be the first townhomes kind of in the like metro, new townhomes in the metro concentric rings. So I'm just trying to think about that. But there's some things I'm not clear on. What is a triplex? In my world, a triplex would be 3 units right next to each other, glued side by side, but I suspect that's not what they are. What is a triplex?
So a triplex, it's Peter Reinick from VICA. A triplex is like a 2/2, if you can imagine a 2/2, but it's wider, and it has one level of unit for that third one. So you go up with the garages, which are tandem spaces, and there's sets of 2 or 3 tandem spaces. And then you have one level up from that, which is all one unit. And then the top 2 floors are split, just like a 2/2, one floor and one floor on top of those.
So they're horizontally built townhomes stacked vertically. Is that what you're saying? So 3 townhomes on top of a garage?
So one level is on top of the garage for one unit. And then the other 2 units are split between the top 2 floors. All right.
So it's
a total
one
of
unit
4 floors.
Horizontal, or one unit, one level living?
Yeah.
And then 2 units are like
a
2
level unit. Oh,
wow.
2 units
So it's
are
like
2 level.
Tetris. Okay.
And
So that's
like
called a
typical
triplex.
Typical 2/2 is 24 feet wide. These are 34 feet wide, the same depth. Whereas a
Okay.
2x2 normally has a big driveway. There's 2 tandem in spaces in the bottom of this.
So does one of those 3 units not get a garage space?
They all get 2 garage space, but they're tandem inside the garage. It's like a double garage inside, stacked.
Okay. Okay. But only 2 garage doors? I need to see these things in real life.
There's 3 garage doors.
3 garage doors. Oh, in that 34 width.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So unit 1 parks tandem, unit 2 parks tandem, unit 3
Yes.
parks tandem.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. How tall is a triplex?
Same as a 2x2, which is about 55 feet tall.
Oh, wow. So they're taller than single families. These are
Yes.
35 foot is the max. Oh, wow. Okay. So
Most townhouses now are about 40, 42 to 45, with a pitch roof on top of that.
does that count those? I saw in the rendering there was like a outdoor
Yeah, so
roof
that's
space.
an option with townhouses to have, your standard ones, which are, 3 stories, and then you have a rooftop terrace, which is flat, which is counts as like a third of a floor.
Does that count against the 55-foot height?
So, that does not quite as count as that. So it depends on the structure that's going up to the top of the stairway.
All right. So you've
But
got townhouse.
again, a townhouse is only 42 to 45, whereas a 2x2 or stacked townhouse and a triplex are 50 to 55.
Okay. So a 2/2 is one person occupies 2 floors and someone else occupies 2
Yes, that's
floors
correct.
above. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Those were my questions. I'm not totally familiar with those quote product
It's
types.
a relatively new product.
Which one? The triplex? Or the
Triplex.
2/2? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think something like this type of unit or units was at one time being proposed for a site in Rust. That is not moving forward at this time, but it's in the association drive. Is that?
It was
Mark?
same. I'm working on that too. It is the same
okay.
product, and that is
Okay.
just starting up again.
Okay.
And these are owner occupied. They're not rental units because for, I don't know, the last 15 years, all anybody wanted to build was apartments. And now we're back to owner. I
Yes,
shouldn't say
owner
owner occupied. I would say owned, fee simple ownership. We're back to fee simple ownership. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened? Why are apartments completely out of favor now?
Interest rates.
Interest rate for the third party buyer or interest rate for the developer?
For rentals to work with the current construction pricing, just as on average, because there's always exceptions to the rule, but on average, when the interest rates jumped, the rents didn't really climb to match that interest rate jump. But when it came to owned product, all the owned product kind of maintained its price. So all of a sudden, where everybody wanted to build multifamily because the long-term financing worked for it, now the owned product is economically working a lot better because of the stability in the price of what people can afford and what people are paying for.
So there's enough money in the buyer market, but there's not enough money in the renter market.
Correct.
To pay the going rates.
To pay the cost of construction, really.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ben, do you have any questions?
Yeah, my questions were sort of about the layout. I think I may have gotten sort of misoriented from where I was looking, but the phase 1 of the project that you're developing looked like it was basically phase 2 is sandwiched in between phase 1 and the metro station. Is that right? Or was I not seeing that correctly? Okay.
Yeah. Phase 1 is closer to the Vesper Trail. Phase 2 is closer to Spring Hill Road.
And that's where I don't know if the expectation is that the majority of the pedestrian traffic is going to go on the Vesper Trail or just directly across that same, which I think is going to be continually occupied office space of phase 2 to get towards the metro trail, metro stop. And so I think, to me, that would just be my sort of primary consideration, is the pedestrian traffic going from what is that residentially developed area passing through an office space with parking lots and a lot more cars to get towards where is other things, whether it's other parts of Tysons or the metro. And I mean, I imagine you're still early and there's going to be lots of time to think and plan for that, but that would seem to me to be a point of concern.
Zach, will you flip to the quarter-mile radius?
Sure.
So one thing, you can kind of see it on this, because I agree with your concern. I mean, we really want to take care of how pedestrians are interacting. One, because the single family pedestrians, as well as the pedestrians in our own project. So one of the things that right now, you can kind of see the Vesper Trail kind of coming through the forest. The nice thing is Spring Hill Road and the Vesper Trail actually create a piece of pie, a slice of pizza. And the Vesper Trail actually continues all the way up to Leesburg Pike in the metro. So most pedestrians have the optionality of, do you take the sidewalk perpendicular to Spring Hill Road, then walk up Spring Hill Road, or you can take the sidewalk to the Vesper Trail, walk all the way up the Vesper Trail up to Leesburg Pike and up to the metro. So we definitely want to make sure the Vesper Trail is connected to Spring Hill Road to give that optionality, but there's some nice infrastructure there. And while we're looking at this, that green blob that looks like it's in the middle of a parking lot is right now an approved soccer complex that's Peter, you can correct me which approval it's a part of, but it's an approved soccer complex from other developments of the neighborhood.
That makes sense, that there's options of infrastructure there that you can try to funnel that pedestrian traffic to. And yeah, having the sports field there, that is nice to have that available. If there's going to be a lot of that single family, 2/2, those are the housing that in my mind is a bit different than the other ones that we've seen that are, studios and maybe not as filled with children. Whereas these, I would assume you guys are expecting to maybe have more families than some of the other housing at Tysons. So
that would be our expectation.
Yeah, no, and I think that's, it seems like you definitely have taken into consideration those options of ways to try to accommodate for that foot traffic to get around and onto the existing infrastructure. But other than that, I don't have any, substantive questions, because I think there's still probably a lot more details you guys have to plan.
Okay. I just have one question at this point. For phase 1, how many ADUs and would there be any workforce units involved, or would there be any workforce units?
There will be. We don't have the exact numbers yet. It's going to depend on what's actually built, approved and built. It's actually just a formula. It's a very complicated formula, but we'll have those numbers as we get closer to the end, the finish line here.
Okay, thank you. Aja, do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, yes, I do have a few comments. Let me pull up my notes real quick.
Oh, and let me ask you, do you live near this site?
Yes, so let me introduce myself. My name is Aja Shacker, and I'm the president of the Greater Tysons Green Civic Association. So I represent the 365 plus homes right on the other side of the forest from this development. So I, in fact, live just footsteps from the Vesper Trail. And when I walk this trail with my family, we see these buildings all the time. We have been to meetings in the concourse. And so we're pretty familiar with the site, as well with a lot of the development plans going on in this corridor. And so I'm coming here specifically as the representative for the Greater Tysons Green community. and voicing some of their concerns or just views on the plan, actually, because frankly, I do think the Bermans have done a pretty nice job in addressing some of the community concerns. And I just wanted to flag that among the concerns of the community are, one, the buffer up against the forest. And I do think this plan does a pretty good job of not just creating that buffer, but the step down to the forest, I think, is really nice. I think I spoke with Kevin, I think I might have met with you some time ago. And at the time, they were torn between kind of how they were going to approach it, whether it was going to be a site for, townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, or whether it was going to be sort of taller apartments. And there was pros and cons to both sides. I was sort of surprised to see that he went with a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And I do think that drawdown to the forest and mitigation to sort of protect that buffer is a really nice, kind of preserve some of that more suburban and neighborhood feel as you're kind of near the forest, but while still, I think, meeting the needs and the future needs of the Tysons area growth, which with the high level apartment buildings. The other sort of concern that the community has, in addition to preserving some of those environmental aspects, has to do with congestion in the area. And I think the grid roads, as far as I can see them on this plan, are actually quite nice. We're very concerned about buses and things flowing through development in these in this sort of area. For example, I think one of the new buildings that's just being put up, there is no place for school buses to turn around. And so I think that they have addressed that quite a bit, making sure that this is navigable. So I think keep that in mind as we talk about narrowing some of the pass-throughs, like where buses would be going for students. I'm assuming they can walk a bit further. It should be fine. Frankly, it's so close, they can just walk to Westbriar. The congestion at Westbriar itself, so separate from grid and parking congestion, residents are concerned about the impact on Westbriar, but I don't think this is just a responsibility of the Bermans and this project. I think this is a broader concern on this Tysons corridor that we are building without planning for the school needs. So I think the plan as it is now is actually quite good. I think did a pretty good job at meeting a lot of community concerns. And I appreciate that the second phase would sort of, from my understanding of the Berman's approach to development, kind of retain their connection to the community in which they're investing. And I appreciate that they're looking at that sort of in the long term, and we'll come back to the committee to see how that particular piece shapes up. So yeah, so there's just kind of like flagging the concerns of the community, and then just like, again, raising is like how parking will settle in here and how navigable those streets are for larger vehicles, and kind of encouraging this approach that they've had to protecting the forest and retaining that buffer. I think what they're offering is the kind of growth we want to see, right? As opposed to a casino. And so we encourage, this kind of investment in the community, and we're grateful that they were looking over our way. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. John Carter, do you have any comments or questions at this time? Oh, you're Sean.
We're at the stage where calculations would be helpful, I think. So we'd like to see what is the impact on schools. We know it's going to be fairly dramatic. The open space, so we'd like to see the calculations, excluding the townhouse requirement, just the raw urban parks framework. What is the calculation? And then I think this would be the time to show some of the adjacent development. We talked about the soccer field, but there are buildings in here too. So I think it would be useful to show some of the approvals in this area, and they're all around here. Then some of the concerns would be construction of Boone Boulevard. Who's building that? Everybody should watch out because you end up being the last person who's required to build all the infrastructure. So we know that doesn't work. So who's going to construct Boone Boulevard, and how's that going to work? Is that totally off your site, or is it on your site in this example? That's a question. Is it on the
It's
site?
partially-
half.
Zach, you want to slide down to the slide? It actually shows it pretty
Sure.
well.
We're going to be partially dedicating some of our land to accommodate that future road.
But how does it get built then, would be the question. Dedication is one thing, but then building is the other. Then the stream there, are you outside the buffers that are required? I don't know, just make sure
Yes,
you
we
are.
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Then isn't that stream, it has some decay in it, and are you fixing that up, fixing up the stream a little bit?
That was just completed. It was a stream restoration project down there, so they just completed that.
And nothing else needs to be done?
No, looks great down there.
And then the open space, it should be a network of open spaces. So I don't know, you're going to have some kids here, so maybe a playground, other open spaces. I would show the soccer field, how that all fits together. Tysons has a network of open spaces that we're supposed to be developing, although we've probably been a little remiss at that. So it's the calculations, the schools, the urban parks, and then the design of the streets, Boone Boulevard, and then the network of open spaces, and then probably showing the surrounding areas would be good. See, the way you've got it, you can't get from east to west on this site, across the site. Boone Boulevard, I guess, is supposed to do that, but you don't have a way to do that that's easy. But anyway, those are my concerns. It's time to take the next step in designing this, I think.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, John. So we have quite a bit of time before this would go to
Yes.
the planning commission. So, the question is, when would you want to come back? Normally, in the past, we would take August off, but sometimes we don't. But essentially, we meet monthly and regularly on the third Tuesday of the month, if there's anything on our agenda. So, do you have any ideas to when you might want to come back?
Well, I think we want to we know kind of working backwards, we want to make sure we come back with enough time for a vote prior to the hearing. And like I said, we haven't even had that initial meeting with staff, so things will probably change. So I think we want to come back at least once, obviously, for a decision, a vote. We might need to come back another time if we make, enough changes here, and also we want to make sure we get that information that Commissioner Carter mentioned to the committee. So maybe we come back, later in the summer, and then one more time before the public hearings, if that makes sense for everyone here.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm thinking maybe July, September. We could do September, but that's getting a little closer. And I think when we have more members, more committee members, there would be, more questions and other issues may come up. So, but it's your choice.
Yeah, that works. We can look for that and find a date that works for everyone. Well, you said you typically meet on the third Tuesday of the month, so
Correct.
We'll look to that date.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm just asking, before we adjourn, well, we can adjourn for this part of the meeting. I think John, the committee will have a conversation about what's coming down the road. But the people from the Tysons team, we'll see you next time. So thank you.
Okay, see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So John, what do you see coming down the road then?
I would think that the Sheridan would be coming back sometime. I've seen several schemes of that, so the Sheridan would probably be the next.
Okay.
And then I know Anne Marie's been waiting for the casino to come, but that's probably not.
Yeah. So Sheraton, basically they're looking at demolishing it and building something new. Or is there
really?
any potential for use?
So what happened to the micro apartments that they had proposed a couple years ago?
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They were going to put that in the Sheridan itself. But I think I was skeptical of that anyway. You can't just turn a hotel room into a micro apartment. That seems not adequate. So no, right now they just take the whole thing down.
What's interesting is, I mean, that used to be such a big hotel and conference center.
Yes.
It had like major events.
Yeah.
And there's no way to hold major events in this area. I mean, we were looking at, my daughter does Irish dancing, and they have these big Irish dance events, and they're always, they're either in Orlando or Chicago at the big Renaissance or the Gaylords, and none of those are accessible by metros. And then you have Tysons, which is, and I really thought that the like the Watermark, but it's not big. Like there's no major event space in Tysons, which is, and I'm talking a major event, like 800 room hotel or something like that. So it's all straight into DC. It's just interesting to me that the only place to have a major industry conference around here is DC. So it used to be at the Sheraton there.
The Marriott in Reston, I don't know how major, but it's a pretty big facility. The new one that's just opened is pretty good size.
Is it? I didn't think like what do they call it? Keys. It had enough hotel key rooms. Like there's permanent spaces, there's apartments. So
a big portion of it is the residences they sold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's no spillover space. So like if everybody can't be at the principal location, you spill over to the auxiliary. It's just really interesting to me because all these places are on the metro, but it's a onesie twosie kind of use, not a major event.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we'll meet in May or possibly June, John.
I don't know of anything coming up in June. Do you know, Mark? Is it?
No, nothing else has been accepted or has planning commission hearing dates. I know they're working on the plans for the Sheridan site, so maybe they'd be ready to come do an intro at some point, in the middle of the summer. But I don't know what their sort of time frame is. I'll certainly try to reach out to them and see when they might be ready to come introduce the new update to the committee.
I'm surprised there's been lots of approvals around here going back pretty far. Like around the project we just saw, there's lots. There's 2 or 3 really large ones, but I don't know. They've disappeared. I'm surprised they haven't come back with changes to meet whatever the market is today. Obviously, it didn't work 10 or 15 years ago when they came in. But there's actually lots of development approved in this Hunter Mill area of Tysons.
Yeah, and then on the Hunter Mill side, that includes the Hunter Mill side.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. See each other next time.
Okay. Good meeting.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good night.
Yeah. Bye.